I forgot to put my slide up. Early glimpse on Denver Football After Dark for this Thursday night into Friday morning. Late Thursday night in the Pacific time zone, Friday morning in the Mountain time zone. The joint practice with the San Francisco 49ers in the books. First glimpse of the 49ers, or first glimpse of the Broncos, I should say, against somebody else. And I'll say this, even though it wasn't perfect, certainly the defense got off to an exceptional start, and then the Niners were able to make some plays at its expense. And certainly, Bo Nix didn't always have a clean pocket with which to operate. And the run game showed some spark, but didn't get all the yards you wanted it to get. I definitely came away with a different feeling than some of the other joint practices over the years, at least in the last decade. Howdy, Broncos country. I was thinking about some of the other times we've seen joint practices, going back over the years, thinking of being here in 2017 here in Santa Clara, 2018 watching the Broncos against the Bears, 2019 Broncos 49ers at the Broncos facility, 2021 Broncos Vikings. That was in Minnesota. A lot of these joint practices revealed something that didn't augur well for the season to come. Like 2018, for example, the Broncos could not cover tight ends against the Bears to save their lives. And what did we see later that year? We saw the Broncos struggle to cover tight ends to the point where when they came back here to Santa Clara later that year, George Kittle nearly set the NFL single game receiving yardage record for a tight end against the Broncos in one half. And then, if not for the 49ers going away from him in the second half, he would have broken Shannon Sharp's single game record for receiving yardage by a tight end. And then 2019, the Niners came to Denver, played, or practiced, I should say, with a lot more fire than the Broncos had the first day. Broncos came back the next day with more vim and vigor, but the fact that the Niners came in and had that intensity that the Broncos didn't have, it probably foretold a lot of what was to come in the 3 years of the Vic Fangio era, where the Broncos sometimes lacked what Vic himself would call oomph. And then, of course, 2021 going up to Minnesota for those couple of days where you saw Drew Lock, when he was with the ones against the first-team Vikings defense, struggle mightily. And then Teddy Bridgewater, when he was out there with and against the ones, struggle in the red zone. And just seeing those two practices telling me that, okay, the answer isn't on this team at quarterback. So you've had these joint practices over the years that sort of foretold doom. So comparatively, it's nice to have a joint practice that didn't have that same feeling. Sort of like last year when the Green Bay Packers came to Denver, and the thing I look back on that, it was positive. It was the Packers coming in, and they actually dominated the early part of that practice. And in fact, if it had been stopped halfway through, or about 65% of the way through, the Packers were owning that day. But in something that foretold what was to come in the season, the Broncos found their footing and responded. And by the end of the day, you were feeling pretty good about the Broncos' ability to match up with what turned out to be a very good Green Bay team that was a playoff team. So now that brings us to Thursday and sort of the general thing that you saw. On the Broncos offense field, Broncos offense versus 49ers defense, things that you liked. You liked the way Troy Franklin looked, taking what he did on the practice field against his own teammates, continuing to have the explosiveness, continuing to be on the same page with Bo Nix, continuing to make plays. You liked Marvin Mims Jr. continuing to get involved, probably involved maybe a little more so than in the practices back in Denver. I wrote about the following here at denversports.com, and something that was talked about at the post-practice press conferences. Bo Nix, the second act, as Sean Payton and Bo Nix call it. Another way of saying it is like what happens beyond structure, beyond the play structure when it gets into improv mode. Some of Bo Nix's better moments were involving that. The play breaks down, the pocket breaks down, Bo's moving. I thought his best single play was one of these moments when he's flushed out. He's headed toward the right sideline. He throws across his body. Devon Vele's there. It was just perfect, just ideal, and it's going beyond design. It's what great quarterbacks do. They go beyond what is in the playbook. There are a lot of quarterbacks that can stick to the script. The ones who are the most successful are the ones who go beyond that, who can leap beyond the design. And Bo is gaining the confidence to do that. And he's getting the timing with his receivers to have them be able to read and see when he's on the move and adjust to get in position. So you had that. You had a touchdown where Bo was on the move and Cortland's reading it, and he's in the back of the end zone and Bo sees him. Court gets it. He drags his toe. Touchdown. These are the types of moments that I think will be harbingers of what is to come for this offense, for this to leap beyond what Sean Payton designs and go to another level. As I pointed out in my story at denversports.com, the first month of the season, the Broncos were 27th in total offense. From week 5 onward, they were 14th. Moments like this are what take Bo Nix to another level and take this offense to another level. Take it to where you hope it's a top 10 offense. And if it's a top 10 offense, then you're talking about this team being capable of doing some great things, especially partnered with the defense. Now, an interesting day on the defensive field. On the one hand, all sorts of pressure. I mean, this D, and it's wild to say this, coming off of a season in which the Broncos set a franchise sack record, in which they led the NFL in sacks. I mean, where do you go from up at the tippy top? But they might be better as a pass rushing team this year than last year. For most of the day, the 49ers did not have an answer for the Broncos up front. Not just in the pass rush, but in the run. Like you'd look and you'd see one or two guys in the backfield when it was a handoff to Christian McCaffrey. The play would happen, and within about second and a half, you'd see Zach Allen, or you'd see Malcolm Roach, or you'd see DJ Jones, or if it went outside, you'd see Jonathan Cooper there, or you'd see, or sometimes Jahdae Barron got brought on a blitz, you'd see him there. I mean, you'd see Jahdae, Justin Sternad was brought on a blitz at one point. I mean, it was at times a flood coming in. And yet, by the end, there's probably a little bit of a bitter taste in the Broncos' mouths. I mean, you started with the red zone period where they gave up a couple of touchdowns. Now, and this was a red zone period where the Broncos still got like 3 sacks. Andrew Farmer had one, D'Andrea Tillman had one, Jonah Ellis had one. So when we talk about Jonah Ellis and D'Andrea Tillman, so you're talking about 2 guys who seem to be flashing on an everyday basis, carrying it forward. I mean, how often do we talk about the depth the Broncos have at edge? And so the days those 2 continue to stack, they carried it forward to this practice. So, just another check mark for those 2 being a pair that will be able to give Coop and Nick Bonito some relief, be able to keep them fresh because you can trust them to give you some high-level snaps. And yet, that red zone period also saw some back-to-back touchdowns on consecutive plays. And after that period, Broncos and Malcolm Roach was, trying to bring the defense together, trying to get him, fired up. I mean, he was, yelling, kind of yelling at his teammates because, of course, Malcolm's one of the more vocal guys, and he was trying to, get them all together as a leader and a vocal leader does. And then in the move the ball periods, the Niners took it to the Broncos, getting downfield. They had the move the ball 2-minute period, the ones drove to a touchdown and the backups drove to a field goal. So you had a little bit of a bitter taste. Now, that being said, if there's anything 2 yards coming hard, I think that is the case. I mean, you looked at some of the plays and the Broncos, except for the touchdown in the ones versus ones, where Brock Purdy had a lot of time to operate, and it was a matter of Demarcus Robinson kind of, breaking off his route and scoring, and Riley Moss just could not hold coverage, but for so long. I mean, there comes a point, like you get to 8-9 seconds, almost no cornerback's going to be able to hold coverage for that long. So that touchdown was less on Moss and more on not getting pressure, right? Or you had Brock Purdy just kind of back there and at that point, it's not on the secondary, it's on up front, not getting a rush to disrupt Brock Purdy. So one of the rare snaps on this day when there wasn't pressure on the 49ers quarterback. So it's hard to get upset about that one snap when most of the other snaps had Brock Purdy or Mac Jones, the top two Niners quarterbacks, operating under extreme duress. So the broader sample size, the big picture, you say the Broncos front seven did wonderfully in this practice, showed that they're going to be an absolute disruptive force to be reckoned with. And yet, you imagine that at the end, they probably were left kind of kicking themselves a little bit. But at the same time, it's not the worst thing because it gives you something to work on. And Talanoa Hufanga made that point when I asked him just about how the practice went for the defense on Thursday. Here's what Huff had to say.
I didn't think we did handle well, but that's what practice is for. We're here to learn. We're not here to come here and be perfect. Everybody strives to be perfect. Don't get me wrong, but if we came in here and we beat them every single rep, then there's no growth in that. We want to know what works, what doesn't, push the limits, be in the spots that might not be the right spot, but if the risk is there, you want to see what can work and what can't. And it's better to have it happen now than week 17 and the game's on the line and you need to get to the playoffs or something like that. You'd rather happen it now. So we're ready for those moments.
Big picture. Yeah. It's fun to talk about these things, and you can be frustrated in the moment when they happen against you, when you give up that drive at the end, but big picture, it's still practice. It's still learning. Saturday's preseason game. It's a game. You want to win. And make no mistake, yeah, you do want to win the game, even though it's preseason. You want to have that dub on the scoreboard at the end, but it's still just preseason. That's it. And it's still about development. It's still about evaluation. It's about finding out what you've got. So those are kind of my opening thoughts, my opening 17 minutes of thoughts on this. And I didn't really say much about the special teams. Broncos have some aggressive dudes out there when you're talking about the Gunners and Jammers especially. One thing, since you know how I like my punting drills, sort of the same type of performance for Jeremy Crawshaw on punting as we see in training camp. There were some blasts that hung in the air forever. And then about every sixth or seventh punt, there was a shank. There was one that sliced off his right foot and just went way out of bounds. Like it would have been, if it were a golf tournament, it was sort of like if you saw a tin cup when Roy McIlroy begins his final round at the U.S. Open and he's hitting it all over the place, and at one point ends up behind the porta potty. That was sort of what one of the punts was like. It was like, everyone like, look out, like, whoa, like people are on this, like, would have been like, incoming. But then right after that, he just went back to hang times of like 5-1 and 5-2. So it goes back to what Sean Payton and Darren Rizzi have talked about with Crawshaw, and just you want to get that consistency because you don't want that one every 6 or 7 punts that is shaky to be at the wrong time. You want to get that bad punt to be like once every 20, right? That's the thing. So as titanic as a lot of his boomers are, and there are some that you're watching, and again today, they were just we're back at close to sea level, and he's still launching them. But there was one that just went off the side of his foot and sliced and did a beeline for the sideline, and all of us in the Denver media were just like, oh boy. So Anyway, so that's your punting report for the day here on Denver Football After Dark. Scotty Gaines said the Broncos were trolling the Niners during punt drills for double teaming the gunner past the whistle. Yeah, I actually wasn't sure what they were doing. Where you could see at one point they were yelling at them. Where I was, and where some of the other reporters were, we weren't sure what was going on and why there was a ruckus. So I'm actually glad that Scotty kind of pointed that out, because we weren't sure. At one point, there was some yelling back and forth. Nothing turned into fisticuffs, but there was some yelling back and forth. So I'm glad that was put out there. That's what that was about. So Peanut, I'm excited for the Aussie. Hopefully he's able to figure out the consistency. Yeah, because that is the thing. Like, as we observed it, the whole thing is like, if you have one of those shanks with 3 minutes to go and your 4-minute offense has failed to get a first down, and you need something where you're pinning the opponent back, and you get a 25-yarder that just goes straight for the sideline, instead of pinning them back at the 10-yard line, they're starting at the 35. I mean, the coach ain't going to be too happy. So, Braxton Gregory, how involved was Mike Shanahan looking at both sides? Babe was excited to see Bo. We were taking note of that. So I'll just give you a little kind of an inside thing. I watched the practice with a few other reporters. I was gathered with Chris Thomason of the Denver Gazette, who is often my partner in crime on road trips. We often go have dinner together and hang out. We actually had dinner at a Vietnamese restaurant tonight, and with Chris, he's a great guy. It's always an adventure traveling with Chris in a good way. And he used to cover the Minnesota Vikings, and a lot of their beat reporters will tell you the same thing. And so it was Chris Thomason, myself, Parker Gabriel, and Luca Evans of the Denver Post, and Zach Stevens of DNVR. And we were all kind of clustered together. And myself and Luca Evans, we were kind of focused on the defense. Chris was kind of watching both. Parker and Zach Stevens were watching the offensive field, and we were just kind of all exchanging notes and kind of doing a play-by-play, because you can't really watch everything when there are two fields going on. But we had a nice angle to see both fields. And so in something like this, we kind of pool and work together to make sure that we get it. And the other kind of inside baseball that you get on this is actually in our beat at least, the reporters really get along very, very well and do hang out a lot away from the beat. So that's actually something to kind of share with you guys. But that's, but Braxton asking about how involved was Mike Shanahan, and that got me thinking about all of us reporters, because we were all looking at Mike Shanahan, because he was standing about 30 yards in front of us. And one of us in our crew noticed Mike was watching the Broncos a lot more than he was watching the 49ers. And my response was, well, he's been out here watching the Niners because he's been here with his son, Kyle Shanahan, and he's around the 49ers a lot. So, of course, he's going to pay more attention to the Broncos, because with the Niners, he's seen them every day. He knows what he's looking at. He's familiar with them. He wants to see the Broncos because he hasn't laid eyes on them in a while. But as a Broncos alum, he's understandably curious, and he's curious to see Bo Nix as, someone who knows the quarterback position particularly well, and Mike is still very interested in the goings on of the Denver Broncos, even though obviously with Kyle Shanahan with the 49ers, that's where his attention and focus is now in his retirement years, although he's retired, but he's still very involved in football and very close to it, even though he's not full-time in it. And but he was watching the Broncos closely, no doubt about that today. But if he's for anybody, he's definitely for the Niners, as he should be. I mean, that's his son. So, Peanut Head, I won't stop hating the Hall of Fame until they put Mike in. It's such a joke at this point. Yeah. And I don't know when it's going to happen. And unfortunately, the Hall of Fame seems to be regressing in terms of how many people they want to put in. Look, the Hall of Fame has a backlog, in my opinion, and yet you only had a class of 4. Like, what are you doing here? Like, why? What is the issue with having a 7-person class? I mean, why all of a sudden do you want to start making it an uber exclusive club? It already is exclusive. It's not. It already is the truly elite, the creme of de la creme. I mean, do you know how? I mean, just think about how many thousands of players come through this sport. How many thousands of coaches there are. It's not like it's not like you're honoring anybody who's borderline, right? I mean, just take a look at names that aren't in. I mean, Mike Shanahan's not in. Mike Holmgren's not in. On the playing side, I mean, Reggie Wayne is not in. I mean, around here we talk about Rod Smith, and Rod Smith, respectfully to him, is behind probably 10 to a dozen receivers who are waiting to get in. That's the sad thing for Rod is, I mean, he had a great career, but he's not going to sniff it, the Hall of Fame, because they've decided to turn receivers getting into the Hall of Fame into this standard that's kind of ridiculous at this point. I mean, it felt like it took a major miracle just to get Steve Smith to be a finalist, and Steve accomplished his numbers mostly with Jake Delhomme throwing him the football, and then he had a few years of young Cam Newton, and then Joe Flacco at the end of his career, and it's like, and he still put up these ungodly numbers, and he did it in a spectacular fashion, and did it as a guy who, and he was productive for 15 years. And I mean, it's like, what are we doing here? How are we sitting here with a 4-person class this year? Boggles my mind. How did you say no to Mike Holmgren when he was the coach nominee? Why wasn't Mike Shanahan the coach nominee? And if he had been the coach nominee and they'd said, and that, I guess the only relief is that they didn't nominate Mike Shanahan, because if he had been nominated and not gotten in, would he have ever gotten in? So it's crazy. And the fact that Bill Cowher is in and Mike Shanahan isn't is ludicrous. And here's the thing. I'm not saying Bill Cowher should not be in the Hall of Fame. But if he's in, Mike Shanahan should be in. If Tom Flores is in the Hall of Fame, and he should be, Mike Shanahan should be in. So should Tom Coughlin. And there hasn't been a sniff on Tom Coughlin yet. Coughlin's got 2 Super Bowl rings as a head coach, and his case is at least as strong as Mike Shanahan's. Mike has the back-to-back Super Bowl rings, and he's got the coaching tree. Tom Coughlin has the 2 Super Bowl rings with the Giants. Mike's other stint in Washington obviously doesn't work well in his favor, except for the coaching tree. Tom Coughlin doesn't have the coaching tree, but he has a successful other stint in Jacksonville, building an excellent team from scratch, and of course, they both have the 2 Super Bowl wins in common. They should both be Hall of Famers, and respectfully to Bill Cowher, they should have been in before Bill Cowher. So, anyway, Luke Kuechly, yes, Michael, Luke Kuechly should have been a first ballot. And this is another thing. There has to be, and I think especially now when we think about short careers because of injuries or concerns about CTE and whatnot, there has to be some thought toward greatness even when it is brief. I'm glad, for example, that Terrell Davis eventually got in because he deserved it. Yes, his comet streaked across the sky for but 7 seasons, but what marvelous seasons they were, especially those first 4. There's something to true greatness, even if it does not last very long. Luke Kuechly, his peak, maybe top 5 inside linebacker of all time. Peak. That's how good he was when he was at his apex. I mean, he was if I was voting, he was first ballot Hall of Famer. So, all right. Oh, thank you, Super Sight. Appreciate that, man. Miss you, Cecil and DMAC talking Broncos. Well, I mean, I'm still talking with Cecil every day at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, and DMAC's still talking Broncos. I mean, he's got his channel as well. It was really good to see DMAC over at Broncos practice on Saturday. It was just last Saturday he was out there, and because he can't make it every day because of the time of his show, and just it was good to catch up. It's DMAC's one of my favorite people. So again, the little media circles in Denver, most of us get along pretty well. You know, I think most people like me, or I don't know. Who cares? Mike Shanahan, Alex Gibbs. Remember Terrell Davis 2000 plus? Yeah. If more assistant coaches were considered for the Hall of Fame, Alex Gibbs would be one of those guys. There really should be something to get more assistants in the Hall of Fame. I also wish there were more, that we had some assistants in the Ring of Fame as well for the Broncos. Like you go down to Tampa Bay and you look at their Ring of Honor, and the late Monty Kiffin is in there, their former defensive coordinator, one of the more brilliant defensive minds that there's been. Tampa 2, that's all Monty Kiffin. And when I think of Monty being in the Bucs Ring of Honor, I think to myself, the late Joe Collier ought to have a place in the Broncos Ring of Fame. Alex Gibbs would deserve a similar recognition if it were up to me. I would even put Wade Phillips in that conversation too, for building elite Broncos defenses in two eras, because his Broncos D of 89 through 92 was exceptional for most of those 4 years. Unfortunately, when he became head coach in 93, he ceded the defensive reins to Charlie Waters, who, bless him, but he wasn't a very good defensive coordinator. And then, of course, Wade came back a couple of decades later, and we all know how wonderful that defense was in 2015 and 2016. No fly zone. And he inherited a great D, and he took it to another level. So, Ty, is Kubiak in our Ring of Fame? Not yet. I expect he will be, but not yet. Monty is like the assistant. Yeah, the assistant. Monty Kiffin is... The way I would describe Monty is he had, and I interviewed him a couple of times. He had, over the years, way back when he was with Tampa Bay and before I came to Denver, and he had this, like, in a good way, he had this like nutty professor vibe to him that just was, you couldn't help but be charmed. Like, and you could see why he succeeded. Like, just his mind was always kind of humming with ideas, and he actually was a head coach briefly. At one point, he was the head coach at North Carolina State in the early 80s. He replaced the late Bo Ryan, and one of the moments that kind of doomed him was he called in a surprise onside kick at the wrong time. I believe it was against North Carolina, and it's one of those things where, like, he had an idea and he didn't really have the best feel for when to execute it. And again, sometimes you get kind of, your mind gets the better of you a little bit. But anyway, Michael, Von Miller better make first ballot of the Hall of Fame when the time comes. I expect he will. If he wants to be sure, if he wants to put the exclamation point on that sentence, probably needs one more pretty good year as a pass rush specialist. So I'd say if he could have a 10-sack season with Washington this year, I think that's the kind of thing that could push him into secure first ballot status. I think he's probably a first ballot guy, but maybe just needs that one more good season to nudge him over the top. He was close to that. I thought he was going to get that season in Buffalo in 22 before he had the ACL tear. That looked like in 22, it looked like he was going to have a great season, and it looked like Buffalo might win the Super Bowl that year. I actually will maintain, if Von Miller does not tear his ACL on Thanksgiving Day in 2022, the Bills win the Super Bowl that year. That's my personal belief, that his injury cost them a world championship. Their D and their pass rush was not the same. And unfortunately for Von, he hasn't been quite the same, although he was able to get his pressure rate back last year to a high level. He hasn't got his sack rate back. So he's getting pressure, but he's not quite the finisher he was. Maybe he gets it back this year with Washington. We'll see. So, do you think Bo Nix looks good? I thought Bo had a good day. He was operating under some pressure, but he was able to escape it and make some plays out of it. There was one pass he missed. He had R.J. Harvey open, and he overthrew him. So that's that's the reminder that, okay, kind of like Hufanga said on the defensive side, something to work on. Okay, not perfect. As they used to say back in the 80s, it's one to grow on. So, Lonnie, thanks for your hard work with boots on the ground. Hey, I'm lucky in that I have a job that it keeps me busy, but it doesn't always feel like work. Point out the difference between design rollouts and beyond structure plays. Bo had 0 big-time throws on non-designed rollouts last year, according to PFF. Okay, designed rollout would be, all right, if you guys have watched Broncos offenses for a long time, designed rollout is the classic play fake boot. We've seen it so often. It's a standard play in a Shanahan / Shanahan McVay offense. Hey, you go back to Super Bowl 33 and John Elway with the play fake boot and hitting Rod Smith deep. We've seen that play, variations of that play so often. That's a designed rollout. That is within structure. Okay. Beyond structure is you're in the pocket, rush comes in, and you move. Beyond, and then you're outside of the structure of the play, or you roll out and you identify the rush, and then you see the rush come in, and then you move back. It's actually it's very easy to see. You just kind of you watch for when the rush comes in, and then you see the quarterback move. Basically, beyond structure is generally defined by the disruption coming from the pass rush. Sometimes it can also be from coverage. Another, like, for example, the touchdown. Now, I'm probably giving you a bad example here because it's not on camera, but it did come in the practice today. The touchdown at the end of the 49ers move the ball period at the end of practice that I referred to when Brock Purdy hit Demarcus Robinson. There wasn't much of a pass rush. He had all the time. Coverage hung in there, and then the receivers start breaking off their routes. And at that point, it goes beyond. When the receivers break off their routes and then they start trying to get open, that's where you go beyond structure. You've gone beyond the design of the routes, and they're starting to kind of, you see it in the end zone. They start moving back and forth. That's when you're beyond structure. So I hope that clears it up. But for and then the quarterback, the quarterback and the receivers, they're left to their own devices. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, when you think of Patrick Mahomes' greatness, much of it is beyond structure. It's, a lot of John Elway's plays beyond structure. You think of the drive to, and when he converts those fourth downs, those are beyond structure. Now, if you've got an RPO and the quarterback is pulling it back in and taking off, that's within structure, because if the quarterback is running out of the RPO, well, that's an intended choice out of the RPO. That's within structure. So I think that's I probably used a lot of words to say something that I could have probably said in a little bit simpler fashion, but I hope that clarifies it. So anyway, I just like talking. Beyond, I don't know. I just enjoy talking about this stuff. And I enjoy beyond structure plays even when they work against you. It's fun. It's where you see art. I think you know as Cecil Lamb and I were talking, he referenced Matt Waldman saying it's where you play jazz. It's free form. It's jazz. It's jazz. It's jam band. I say it's art. Whereas in structure, you're coloring within the lines, and beyond structure is where you actually kind of let loose. There are a lot of quarterbacks who can do well within structure. I would say, for example, Brian Griese, when he played, was an exceptional quarterback within structure. When things broke down and it had to go beyond structure, like if one block was missed or so forth, that was where he struggled. He did not have much ability beyond structure. And that was a thing that held him back, and it basically lowered his ceiling. And it was part of the reason why the late Bill Walsh and then later Mike Shanahan, I think they were intrigued by Jake Plummer. One of the reasons why Jake Plummer came to Denver was because Bill Walsh was enamored with Jake Plummer. And if Bill Walsh liked the player, then Mike Shanahan generally liked that player, because what Bill Walsh believed, Mike Shanahan would usually take as just like gospel. And so that was because, Walsh was the, kind of the godfather of these concepts that Mike would run. Like, he learned about all these things in his 3 years in San Francisco. And that's where, that's the genesis of a lot of this offense. And Walsh was a big fan of Jake Plummer coming out of Arizona State. And then, Mike got him in and got some great play out of Jake. But with Jake, you have to live with, some of the, some of the, I want to get the right word here. You have to live with some of the variance. And I think sometimes Mike couldn't really live with that as much as he thought he could. But man, Jake was fun to watch. He was fun. I think those are years that the more time passes, the more fondly they're recalled, I believe. So, Michael, DT's number 88 needs to be retired by the Broncos. Well, it's not being used right now. It has not been used since the 20. It went out of circulation after the 2021 season. It was in circulation. It was used by a practice squad player in the 2021 season, and then since the end of 2021, it's been out. I don't know if it's going to be retired. I mean, I would say respectfully to Demaryius Thomas, his career probably doesn't meet the threshold of jersey retirement. You have 18, what was initially retired for Frank Tripucka, which, if you were using the standards today, you wouldn't retire 18. But when you add Peyton Manning to it, now that makes sense. 44 is retired for Floyd Little, eventual Hall of Famer, literally nicknamed the franchise. He wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer, but in terms of importance to the Denver Broncos, maybe only exceeded by John Elway as the most important player in the history of the franchise. So he's got that. And then, of course, you have number 7 for John Elway. So the threshold for jersey retirement is such that I'm not sure 88 and Demaryius Thomas reaches that. So I would suspect long-term that the honor that will be for him is the one that he will receive formally this season, and that, of course, is the pillar on Ring of Fame Plaza. So Shanahan's mistake drafting Jay Cutler should have stuck with Jake the Snake Plumber. Cutler's talent obvious there. Here's the thing. Jay Cutler had some of the things you need to be a successful quarterback. He had the arm talent. He had the ability to. He had the arm talent. He had the processor. He could learn an offensive scheme. But quarterback requires so much because it also requires leadership ability. It requires being, relatability in the locker room. I mean, there's so many factors that go into it. It's why it's the hardest position to fill probably in all of professional sports. Because the uniqueness of the job description means that it goes beyond just actually having the on-field, on-ice, on-court skills. It goes to things beyond it, like personality. You probably can't be an introvert and be a successful quarterback. It doesn't fly. Like, you could have every other skill, but if you're shy, you probably won't be a successful pro quarterback, or at least there'll be a ceiling on what you can be. So, anyway, I remember one thing with Jay Cutler. I think it was the game in Carolina in 2008, and it was a game the Broncos lost. And he had a pass deflected at the line of scrimmage. And literally, he was looking down and his shoulders were slumped before the ball hit the ground. Like, if you're one who believes body language is a thing and it matters, he had some bad body language. So, anyway, Denver football after dark here on this Thursday night and a Friday morning. I do love how the conversations flow. We always start with the thing, and you see the title of the show, what the Broncos joint practice with the 49ers reveal. Always start with that. It's the inverted pyramid, as we do like in a written story. Start with the thing, and then we just kind of let it flow into other things. I remember when Brandon Marshall refused to catch passes in training camp, just batted them down. And yeah, also remember when he just punted the ball into oblivion during a practice as well. So, yeah. But we also know now that he had some significant mental health issues, which he has discussed as well, which were very real. So I'd say in retrospect, we should give Brandon Marshall, the wide receiver, some grace. Going back to the Hall of Fame, Lonnie Alexander mentioning guys being overlooked. Rick Upchurch, Tom Jackson, Mecklenburg, Foley, Shanahan, Rod Smith. I would say for the Hall of Fame, of those names, the only ones who really are in the discussion and have any kind of shot are Mecklenburg and Shanahan. Mecklenburg has a case unlike any other. He is a unicorn, literally playing all front seven positions. Unfortunately, I don't think people know what to make of his Hall of Fame case, and that's a problem because there's no template for it, I would say, even though he's biased, ask Wade Phillips about Mech. I have asked Wade about Mech. He'll give you a very passionate case for him in terms of all the things that he could do with Mecklenburg. He got some of the best out of Mech. Really kind of helped Mech find a second prime there from 89 through the early 90s. Joe Collier got the first prime out of him. Wade got the second prime. Because of that, he extended Mech's peak effectiveness, and it's why that you can have a legitimate conversation about Mech being a potential Hall of Famer. And I would say should be in. Wade truly made me love watching the defense play. Yep. I love watching Wade's defenses, and I'm old enough to also remember the Buddy Ryan defenses too. And of course, Wade learned an awful lot from 3 years of Buddy in Philadelphia. Buddy was the head coach. Wade was the defensive coordinator. Now Buddy was calling the defenses in Philadelphia. Those were 4-3. Wade took those principles and applied them in a 3-4 scheme, which, one of the things we learned is like 4-3, 3-4. It's kind of, that designation is a little overrated. It's interesting to discuss, but the differences aren't as profound as we used to think that they were. If Carl Mecklenburg was on a coastal team, he'd already be in the Hall of Fame. Dennis Reisman. Yeah. I hate getting into that because the argument against the coastal bias is all the Chiefs that are in the Hall of Fame. And they're only on the coast of the Missouri River. But you have a point there. I'm not going to argue. Michael Rodsmith won't make the Hall of Fame despite his great numbers as a receiver for the Denver Broncos. And the thing is, you go through the receivers, and he's behind so many that aren't in the Hall of Fame is the problem. I think when I went through it at one point, going through like yards and receptions, he was sitting there, and I believe there were like 10 names in front of him that weren't in the Hall of Fame. Like he was sitting behind, I think he was behind two Smiths. He was behind Jimmy Smith and Steve Smith. I mean, so he didn't even have his own surname down, let alone all the other guys. So it's daunting for Rod Smith. I think with Rod, it's okay. It's the undrafted angle that makes him a great story, but that's not something that comes into play in the Hall of Fame discussion. Oh, what was that? Oh, I got a little light there from the TV, and that's over there. There's a little more light here than there usually is on Denver Football After Dark, but it's coming from the television, the flat screen over there, and I've got a little light out the window there too. So I think Aqib has a shot. I think he does. He's got an interesting case. He's got the pick six case as well. At minimum, Aqib Talib, I think, definitely has a Ring of Fame case. And if we're going by the John Lynch argument, 4 Pro Bowls in 4 years, as John Lynch got, and Aqib Talib has that. And oh, by the way, he's got a place on an iconic defense in the no-fly zone. So I would expect Aqib Talib will have his name in at least the Ring of Fame. So Lamar Hunt bias for the Hall of Fame. Yeah, that would actually be something. Lamar Hunt is literally a guy who helped found a league in the American Football League. So he's somebody who does rank in the conversation with like a George Halas, and that probably helps him. I mean, not only founded a league, but literally helped name the Super Bowl. So there's that. And also, his Chiefs of the 60s were exceptional. Yeah, but the Chiefs of the 60s might also be overrepresented by a little bit. So Chris Harris Jr. should be in the Ring of Fame. I'd say Chris Harris Jr. is definitely in the Ring of Fame. And Chris Harris Jr. has an all-decade nod as well. So all-decade is a line on the resume that usually at some point in the future does at least get you in the Hall of Fame discussion. I mean, I don't think he gets in, but I'd say at some point, well down the line, and this is after the Hall of Fame gets over this moment in time where it's deciding to be exclusionary for whatever reason. It's weird with the Hall of Fame right now. Maybe everything's just weird because they've got this Hall of Fame village boondoggle that has a halfway that partially under construction hotel and whatnot, because that is like this financial white elephant there. Maybe everyone's just stressed out and can't. I don't know. So anyway. Talib was a dude I hated until he came to Denver. Then I got it and understood the method to the madness. Yeah. I can see that. I'll admit, and maybe it's because he started off his career in Tampa Bay, and I used to live in the Tampa Bay area, and I have still know a lot of people who are Tampa Bay fans. That's a guy I always had a soft spot for. And to this day, I've been around hardly anybody who was better at explaining the ins and outs of cornerback play than Aqib Talib. Like he's really smart and knows how to explain what a corner does and why he does it. So that I always respected. And of course, extremely colorful. Like I'll never forget after the Titans game when talking about the brouhaha with Harry Douglas. I see him in Atlanta. gonna whip his ass. Gonna beat his ass. Oh man, that was funny. One of my favorite moments in a locker room after a game. I mean, I think the Broncos PR staff, they were just like, "Oh God," like, but I thought it was funny anyway. I'd love that they put Harris and Aqib in the Ring of Fame together. Yeah, and if there are two guys from the no-fly zone who get in, it'll be Chris and Aqib. Probably the safeties just fall short, I think, and TJ Ward doesn't meet the 4-year standard to be in the Ring of Fame. And Darian Stewart probably doesn't have enough, as John Fox would say, skins on the wall to be in, but Aqib and Chris should be in. So appreciate that, Michael, for the kind words on After Dark here. As we're over an hour. Hall of Fame, definitely a political entity. Yep. And yeah, I just put the super chat back up again, and appreciate that coming in on this late night. Sister married Joe Rizzo's first cousin. Rest in peace, Joe. Yeah, that's another good name from the past, Joe Rizzo. The Crabtree chain was epic. You know, I was a little upset at the time with Aqib because he got thrown out of the game against the Raiders, and he put Brendan Langley in a bad spot. But I mean, that was a lost season anyway. And I mean, how many things do we remember from that campaign in 2017? Well, we'll never forget him snatching Michael Crabtree's chain. So Like Donald says there, it was epic. So Carlos says, yes, is Vaughn going to be the first Ring of Famer inducted in the new stadium if he has to wait 5 years? Ooh, that's a good one. I didn't think about that. Yeah. So if this is Vaughn's last season, if he retires after this year and the Broncos move into a new stadium in 2031, that would be right on the timeline. That would be it. I like the way you think, Carlos. I like the way you think. Ignacio says, Peyton Manning couldn't stand him when he was a Colt, would never know what a cool dude he is. Well, that also comes back to the whole Jerry Seinfeld thing of rooting for laundry. What we all do, that a guy's a guy you can't stand when he's in another uniform and then he puts on your uniform and you love him. You know, that when it comes down to it, you're rooting for laundry. So it's the same person, right? Same person. They're just wearing your clothes now, or the clothes that you like. Peyton Manning needs his name on the new stadium. We'll see. We'll see. They'll find a way to honor him, I'm sure. What I would like to see on a new stadium or around a new stadium, they have Ring of Fame Plaza, and I'm sure if there's a new stadium, they will have Ring of Fame Plaza there too. I would like to see a few statues like you see at some baseball stadiums. One of the things I love outside of Atlanta's baseball stadium, Truist Park, is how you've got a statue of Hank Aaron, and you've got a statue of Bobby Cox, and you've got a statue of Warren Spahn, and you've got a statue of Phil Niekro. You go around the stadium, and there are all these statues of Braves greats. There's like one at every gate almost. So like wherever you enter, you see there's a legend statue. And that would be so cool to like walk around the stadium and, there's a John Elway statue there. They'd obviously like still have the Pat Bowlen statue, but there's an Elway statue. There's a Peyton Manning statue. There's a Floyd Little statue. And like a Floyd Little statue could be a statue of Floyd getting carried off the field after the last home game in 75. The John Elway statue could be either somehow a statue of the helicopter or him triumphant after Super Bowl 33 when he's coming off the field. The Peyton Manning statue, maybe it could be him celebrating with Demaryius Thomas, perhaps. You could have a Von Miller statue, it could be Von celebrating. You have so many possibilities here. You could have a Randy Gradishar statue. You could even have a statue of like the Orange Crush, like in the huddle, almost like all together, or the Orange Crush lined up out here in Santa Clara, California, outside of the 49ers stadium, Levi Stadium. They actually have this amazing statue, or two statues, and it's the distance of the catch. Joe Montana throwing to Dwight Clark. And so you've got the statue of Joe Montana throwing the ball and the late Dwight Clark catching it. And so you can just kind of see the distance between the two. It's recreated. It's brilliant. I would love to see things like that. Moments recreated, commemorated, celebrated in statue form outside of a new Broncos stadium. So, yeah, that's my idea. If Greg Penner, if you're watching this and you're somehow still watching this show an hour and 9 minutes and 40 seconds into it, that's my humble idea. But as I often say, it's not my money. I'm not worth that much. So DT statue would be nice. Peyton DT. Or a DT statue. Or a Demaryius Thomas statue. Demaryius on his 80-yard touchdown catch from Tim Tebow, like Demaryius like stiff arming a guy, right? Or, okay. Demaryius up in the stands after his touchdown against Arizona, where there's some you've seen. I don't know if everyone's seen the picture, and there's like someone with beer and like it's almost getting porter spilled on him. Man, now I'm just thinking of all sorts of stuff here. You could have a Terrell Davis statue would obviously have to be a salute. Yeah. All these things would be cool. They'd all be really cool. Just DT's smile. I miss his smile. That's what I miss more than anything about him. He had the greatest smile. The Bo Nix carrying Sean in his back like Luke carried Keanu is gonna be dope in 2040. Peyton statue celebrating Von Miller and that Denver D getting a sack. Oh man. If I could find the picture, I would put it up here. There's a statue inside the lobby at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers headquarters that it shows all the Bucs on the sideline during Super Bowl 37. And it's like John Gruden and a bunch of Buck players, including John Lynch. They're all celebrating. It's a moment that was like on television, but captured on camera. And they're all reacting at a touchdown when they go up like 28-3 and they know they're pounding the Raiders. And it's just, and Gruden's like kind of pumping his fist. And it's like, that's the sort of thing I would love to see, just like moments commemorated. Could there be a statue of Steve Atwater hitting Christian Okoye? And I think about that because in New Orleans, outside the Superdome, there is a statue of Steve Gleason blocking the punt in 2006 when the Saints had their first home game in the Superdome, coming back there after Hurricane Katrina. Now, obviously, that moment was more than just football. So that's part of the reason why it's commemorated, because it symbolized a city returning like a phoenix from the ashes. But still, it's sort of like how a football moment can be preserved, an action moment can be preserved. So that's why I think like that would be so cool to have a Steve Atwater statue of him laying out Okoye. So, as Atwater, as his teammates would call him, Lumba. Oh man, the Gleason statues really that is amazing. That actually get that I've walked by it a couple times over the years. That gives me goosebumps to see that. So 103 here in the Pacific time zone, which means it's 203 in the Mountain time zone. It means it's 403 in the Eastern time zone, which means it's 903 in the UK. Oh man, appreciate you, Sharon. Thank you very much. Thank you for doing that. Again, I don't solicit the super chats, but I'm grateful for the feedback, grateful for people watching. Grateful for all of you staying up with me here. 440 live viewers at 2:03 in the morning Mountain Time. Mace, if San Fran starts out 1-5 and 2-4, any chance Kyle Shanahan is relieved of duty or trades are made, would Sean be interested in Christian McCaffrey and or Kyle as offensive consultant? I I don't think the 49ers would do that. I don't think they'd relieve him of duty that soon. And also, I don't know if the Broncos would bring him in. I think it'd be more likely if Kyle went anywhere as a consultant, it would be somewhere in the Shanahan McVay orbit if he landed somewhere else. So think Houston, Minnesota, Los Angeles, something like that. As for trades, that's definitely possible. It's why I think you'll see the Broncos maybe do some restructures here in the coming weeks to perhaps create some space to where they can be in position to make a deadline trade of some description to add somebody, to add a piece. Because right now, after what they've done, they are butting against the cap. So if they want to make an addition, they're going to have to finagle some things to make it happen. They want to make an addition during the season. And if they do get off to a 6-2 type of start, I think you'll see this team maybe look and make an addition at the deadline. So that is something to consider. Anyway, you're welcome. I mean, I can't get to every comment question, but because I don't want to like not look at the camera as I'm going through this. But I do like to kind of scroll through and see here, and I'm always kind of humbled and grateful for the comments that come through here, and I'm grateful for all of you joining me on this night, even as I'm admittedly getting a little bit sleepy here as I go. As someone asked, so okay, that's a conversation in there. So you guys talk about how someone else looked. People watching the preseason tonight. I have to admit, I will say I saw very little of the preseason. I actually did see though the last 2 minutes of Raiders Seahawks and Pete Carroll getting the kick going for the tie and then trying to get the win at the end and then the kick getting blocked. Oh man. That was such a Raiders ending. It's good to have football back though. Good to have some games back, even if they're preseason. Who's going to watch the Browns on Friday night? Who's going to check out Shedeur Sanders? Me. Although I don't know where I'll be watching it because I might be out at might go to a baseball game on Friday night. We'll see. I don't know what I'm doing yet. Depends how much work I do Friday morning, Friday afternoon. So anyway, appreciate all of you joining me here on this Friday morning, and I can feel sleep stalking me here. So I'm going to get to bed. Thanks for all the questions and comments. Thanks to all of you for joining me here, whether live or on delay. Appreciate the response that this little late night show has gotten. And we'll have a late night show Friday night and it's Saturday morning as well, because we've got a preseason opener to dive into. Broncos 49ers Saturday evening. So we'll tackle that a bit more on the Friday night, Saturday morning edition of Denver Football After Dark. What to look for, what we're going to be watching for. Some of it's going to be a carryover from the joint practice, but probably some different things as well that we're going to be looking for as we see the Broncos in game action for the first time in the 2025 season. It's been over 7 months. It's been building, and now it's finally time. Our wait for Broncos game day action is over. Get to watch them on Saturday night against the San Francisco 49ers down here in Santa Clara. So I'm sure you'll be watching. I'll be in the press box. And of course, I'll have my reports on social media and elsewhere during and after the game, and I'll have plenty of coverage at denversports.com as well. I'll have a preview of the game on denversports.com. I think I'll probably have the written preview up at some point Friday or early Saturday morning, and I'll be here to talk about this on Denver Football After Dark overnight Friday. Cecil Lammy and I will also have a preview show Friday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, our usual orange and blue today, to preview the game. Cecil will also have a wrap on Broncos 49ers immediately after the game on the Denver Sports YouTube channel. I will have a Denver Football After Dark on this channel late Saturday night into Sunday morning. I don't know how long that'll go just because I have an early flight on Sunday. So that may limit just how long I chat, but we will have a preview on Friday night and I will have a post-game show on Saturday at some point. So that's our programming notes here for this channel as well. So appreciate all of you joining me here on this Thursday night, Friday morning to talk about the joint practice and just all the other little ruminations that came across. Thanks as always for checking this out in my little test kitchen and being a part of this. And sincerely appreciate all of you, whether it's late night or in the daytime, for joining this conversation. So until next time, take care. Thanks for watching. And of course, if you enjoy this and you enjoy a little mellow Broncos talk, like, comment, share, subscribe if you enjoy these conversations. And also, if you want to check out my post-practice stand-ups, which will probably be also daily recaps as we get into the season as well, my little 3-4 minute recaps chronicling what's going on with the Broncos. Also going to get into some more long-form videos, some 10 to 15 minute videos as well as we get into the season, as we get out of training camp and I have a little more time to produce some more longer form think pieces. So we'll get into that as well, but that's part of what I have planned here for this channel as I just kind of experiment with things in addition to my After Dark shows, because I enjoy doing these and I enjoy chatting with you. So appreciate you checking this out. Appreciate you joining me here on Denver Football After Dark for this Thursday night, Friday morning from here in Santa Clara, California. Until next time, take care. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you Friday night, Saturday morning before the Broncos preseason opener. Take care, everyone.